Simon Cowell dominated global entertainment for 2 decades, producing hit shows watched by 3 billion people. Yet, at the height of his career, television's most formidable judge began quietly stepping away from the spotlight entirely. What actually happened behind closed doors had nothing to do with ratings, money, or contract disputes. The real reason was a deeply personal family crisis that reshaped his world. Once you learn the truth, nothing about his emotional goodbye looks the same. For over 2 decades, one man dictated the rhythm of American and British primetime television. Simon Cowell did not just participate in pop culture. He engineered it, molded it, and governed it with an iron fist. Beginning with Pop Idol in the United Kingdom back in 2001, he introduced a brand of blunt honesty that changed broadcasting forever. Millions tuned in simply to hear his unfiltered critiques. When he launched The X Factor in 2004 and subsequently brought his talent franchise to America's Got Talent on NBC, his empire became truly unstoppable. He ran a relentless machine. His daily schedule routinely spanned 16 hours, divided between production offices in London and massive studio lots in Los Angeles. Between executive producing duties, talent management through Psycho Entertainment, and live television tapings, he rarely slept more than 5 hours a night. The work was everything. It consumed his entire identity, and he built a multi-billion-dollar fortune by demanding absolute perfection from everyone around him. A lot of people grew up watching those iconic Saturday night broadcasts with family. If you remember exactly where you were during those early years of American Idol or The X Factor, drop it in the comments below. Those collective cultural moments are worth holding on to. For years, the public viewed him as an impenetrable figure. He seemed completely immune to stress, fatigue, or criticism. But human biology eventually catches up with even the most driven executives. The sheer physical tax of 20 years on the road began taking a hidden toll. On an August afternoon in 2020, the armor shattered instantly. While testing a high-powered electric bicycle at his Malibu home, Cowell lost control and suffered a violent crash. The impact fractured his spine in several places. Surgeons performed a delicate 6-hour procedure, inserting a metal rod into his back. He faced months of grueling physical therapy and complete bed rest. The industry held its breath during those uncertain months. The workaholic had been forcibly slowed down for the first time in his adult life. Yet even as he relearned how to walk, a far greater emotional shift was already quietly unfolding within the walls of his home. Simon had conquered the global television industry and survived a brutal physical catastrophe. But a far more intimate domestic reality was about to shatter his priorities entirely. So when that new challenge arrived, how did the hardest man in show business adapt? Power and ratings had defined his life until Valentine's Day in 2014. On February 14th of that year, his son Eric was born in New York City to Simon and his partner Lauren Silverman. The arrival of a child changes any household, but for Cowell, it completely upended his psychological foundation. The man who once lived exclusively for production calls and talent contracts suddenly found himself mesmerized by a newborn baby. Friends and colleagues noticed subtle shifts almost immediately. He began altering long-standing production calendars so he could be home in time for school runs. Studio tapings were occasionally delayed so he could sit down for family dinners. He became an active patron for the charity Together for Short Lives, visiting children's hospices across the United Kingdom and speaking tenderly about the terrifying vulnerability that comes with being a father. In public interviews, he admitted that fatherhood had completely dismantled his cynical exterior. He spoke openly about his deep fears regarding his son's well-being, happiness, and future. For 7 years, he attempted to balance the crushing weight of running a global media portfolio with the quiet demands of raising a young boy. Then came the unexpected reports from inside his production circles. In late 2023, rumors began circulating among senior staff members that something serious was happening behind closed doors. Production schedules were abruptly altered without standard corporate explanations. Private family medical appointments were taking precedence over major network meetings. The executive who never missed a day of work was suddenly absent from high-level board discussions. His physical recovery from the spine injury had been difficult enough. But watching his young child navigate a deeply challenging health ordeal presented a trial that no amount of wealth could resolve. The tough television judge was suddenly forced to confront a reality that money, influence, and ratings could not fix. Simon was finally learning how to balance global fame with fatherhood. But a terrifying private diagnosis would soon force him to choose between his career and his family. What really happened behind those studio doors when the truth was revealed? Behind the scenes of major network television, quiet disruptions began taking place. Detailed medical consultations confirmed that young Eric was facing a serious, complex health challenge that required long-term care, intensive daily monitoring, and absolute emotional stability at home. For a man who had built a career on control, this private crisis was completely unscripted. When news of his sudden absence began spreading through media outlets, public speculation ran wild. Reports claimed that Cowell was secretly retiring due to lingering back pain from his e-bike accident. Others whispered that network executives were pushing him out over falling broadcast ratings, or that financial disputes at Psycho Entertainment were driving his retreat. None of that was true. All of it was completely false. The real reason had nothing to do with corporate maneuvering, spinal injuries, or television ratings. Simon Cowell simply refused to miss a single step of his son's health journey. Faced with long treatment plans and mandatory doctor visits, he made an unprecedented choice. He willingly surrendered operational control of his entertainment empire. He delegated day-to-day management, scaled back international multi-million-dollar contracts, and deliberately stepped away from the spotlight. Before we examine how he delivered this news to his production team, if stories like this, told with depth and authenticity, are the kind you want to see more of, subscribing takes just 2 seconds. There are many more stories waiting to be shared, and some go even deeper than this one. The man who once micromanaged every single frame of live television simply walked away from the control room. He chose to sit beside a hospital bed and hold his son's hand rather than sit under high-wattage studio lights. Ratings meant nothing compared to the daily condition of his child. Network executives scrambled to adjust as their central icon quietly stepped back from his duties. But how would he break the news to his co-judges, his crew, and millions of devoted viewers who expected him on screen? The emotional peak arrived away from public television cameras, inside a quiet production studio. Cowell gathered his longtime production crew, directors, and fellow judges to address his future. Stepping down from major live taping commitments, he spoke with raw vulnerability. He explained that his priority was no longer the global brand he spent 30 years building, but the young boy waiting for him at home. Longtime colleagues like Amanda Holden, Howie Mandel, and Terry Crews embraced him with deep respect. They understood that the fiercely driven executive was making the most meaningful decision of his life. Messages of support poured in privately from industry figures who recognized that Hollywood had just lost its ultimate patriarch to something far more fundamental. Most people never build an empire that reaches billions of viewers across 20 years. And the few who do know exactly what it costs. Not in money, but in the quiet things. The missed bedtimes, the birthdays spent in trailers, and the precious years sacrificed for public applause. Choosing to step away from all of that to protect a child is a profound crossroad that touches anyone who has ever loved a family member. When news of his official absence from upcoming broadcast seasons was finally confirmed to the press, viewers around the world realized an era had ended. The iconic critic had stepped off the stage not with a dramatic spectacle, but with a quiet, dignified departure. The television lights faded on one of the biggest careers in broadcast history. But away from the cameras, a completely different story was just beginning. What does life look like now for a man who gave up his empire for his son? Today, the fast-paced world of Hollywood studios has been replaced by a quiet routine centered entirely on family, recovery, and fatherhood. Simon Cowell's daily life no longer involves late-night editing sessions or high-stakes ratings battles. Instead, it is defined by school drop-offs, quiet afternoons at home, and walking alongside Eric through every step of his medical progress. Away from the intense scrutiny of weekly television, his perspective on life has shifted entirely. He no longer measures success by market share or hit records, but by the quiet stability of his home. His journey, From television's most feared critic to a father who gave up global fame to care for his child, stands as a powerful transformation. There is another story on this channel with a similar pattern. An iconic figure at the absolute peak of their career who chose to walk away from global fame for an untold family truth. That story is available right now on the channel, and once you learn what really happened, you will never view that era the same way again. In the end, Simon Cowell proved that true greatness isn't measured by the millions of strangers who applaud you on screen, but by standing faithfully beside the people who need you most when the cameras stop rolling. If this story stayed with you, go ahead and subscribe. There are more coming, and each one brings you the real truth behind the names you thought you knew.